Thank you very much. So let me begin with from the introduction. And in both public and private sectors, the awareness of disaster risk reduction is not necessarily high with regard to low frequency hazard, especially. And therefore, when such hazard occurs, the damage is larger than the scale of the hazard. And to prevent such a situation, it is important to raise awareness of disaster management in the public and private sectors and prevent the spread of damage by taking effective measures. And one of the important measures to reduce the damage caused by earthquake is seismic retrofitting, what we are dealing with. And to prepare for such low frequency hazards, it is necessary for to properly understand the risks and raise disaster risk reduction awareness and take appropriate measures accordingly. And in particular, the owner of the building is primarily responsible for those measures. So it is important to improve the owner's awareness of disaster risk reduction and something. One of the measures to raise the disaster risk reduction awareness of building owners is the disaster risk reduction town work. And so the purpose of this survey is to clarify how residents' awareness of disaster risk reduction and the cost-bearing consciousness of building seismic retrofitting have been improved by disaster risk reduction town working. Accordingly, the following two research questions are set. The first one is, will disaster risk reduction town work change people's awareness of earthquakes and seismic retrofits? And the second question is, what kind of people are particularly affected by disaster risk reduction town works? And the target area is Taj Bazaar area in Dhaka city, and target disaster risk reduction town work was town watching program, which was conducted by SEAS Asia. So let's go to the second part, contents of town watching program. The town watching program was developed based on UNISDR's town watching handbook and modified to suit the situation in Dhaka city. And the objective of the town watching program are to increase children's and adults' awareness of disaster risk reduction and preparedness. Town watching program mainly consists of three parts. The first part is walking around the area, and each group walks around the predetermined area and finds the designated locations, takes notes, and takes photographs. And the second part involves making a map by each group of each of the locations found and adding explanation and pictures to the map. And the last part is presentation. Each group makes a presentation of what they found in front of all the participants, and other groups ask questions. And here is the basic information about the participants of this survey. These figures show the attributes of participants, age of participants, and occupation of participants, and educational backgrounds. So secondary, high school, and graduate. And also income. Most actually did not answer about the income and number of family members and real estate rights. And also age of buildings and structure of buildings and willingness to rebuild the buildings. So now let's go to the fourth part. This is the main part of this study, changes in the awareness of disasters. Regarding the worried about earthquake, the implementation of the town watching program increased the awareness of earthquake hazards. Before the town watching program, there were 4 who were little worried, but most of them are changed to very worried. And regarding the worry about earthquake by own building age, the residents of the younger building had relatively less fear of the earthquake. So the light color shows, though their awareness changed due to the town watching program. And worry about own building, the town watching program changed the awareness of residents who consider their building safe. And cross-analysis with earthquake awareness shows that many citizens consider their own buildings to be safe, even if they have anxiety about earthquakes in general before the town watching program. But afterwards, it changed to our dark color. And by a building age, there is no clear correlation, but by educational background, the higher the education background will be, the higher the awareness of the earthquakes was. And community programs are likely to be effective with those with a low educational background, from light color to which changed to dark color. And town watching program has a large effect on increasing the willingness to pay. This graph shows the changes in willingness to pay for seismic retrofits. And if the collapse rate probability can be reduced to 40%, so this part and this part or less, the increase rate was more than 70%. And it can be seen that the lower the probability of collapse, the more bias the bar graph exists to the right here. And willingness to pay increases as the collapse probability decreases, both before and after the town watching program. So the more willingness to pay for, more risk reduction. And willingness to pay for seismic retrofit by age before and after town watching program. Under 30 years old showed relatively high values from beginning, increased after town watching program. And middle-aged people were more reluctant to retrofit compared to younger people. And by educational background, though lower educated people were more skeptical about the earthquake before the town watching program, but they has increased drastically after the town watching program. And the residents living in 21 to 40 years old buildings had the highest willingness to pay both before and after. The residents of the building 40 years or older showed the lowest willingness to pay. So willingness to pay is particularly effective for residents of relatively new and old buildings who had low willingness to pay. And also, regarding worries about earthquakes, the town watching program therefore has a particularly large effect on people who are less worried about earthquakes here, almost doubled. So let's go to the discussion and conclusions. I set first two questions. The first one was how people's awareness of the earthquakes and seismic retrofitting are changed, the disaster risk reduction town work. And the answers are, first, people's consciousness about earthquakes, seismic retrofitting, and the cost burden to them was changed by disaster risk reduction town work. And based on these facts, it can be said that the increase of willingness to pay can be evaluated as being significantly higher than the cost of single town watching program, even if we take it into consideration that the result of the questionnaire can be overestimated. And the second question was, what kind of attributes in people are particularly affected by disaster risk reduction town work? And the answers are the impact on the willingness to pay for seismic retrofitting was particularly affected by having less education, by being younger, by whether they're residents of newer or older homes, and by not being worried about earthquakes. It is therefore important to encourage people in these groups to participate in the town watching program for the viewpoint of improving the town watching program's efficiency. That's all. Thank you very much for your kind attention.